Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the ninth and final session of our workshop series, Workshops in Sustainable Career Paths and Curriculum. In this workshop series, you will hear from our alumni from the MS in Sustainability Management program, share their insights on the courses that have helped them launch successful careers in sustainability. After tonight's panel discussion, there will be a Q&A. In tonight's panel, a nonprofit and advocacy, will be moderated by Wendy Hapgood. Wendy is an alumna of the MS in Sustainability Management program and is also a lecturer and faculty advisor in the program. She teaches two classes, our required class, Sustainability Management, and the other class, Practicum in Innovative Sustainability Leadership. In addition to teaching for the Sustainability Management program, Wendy is the co-founder and chief operating officer of Wild Tomorrow, a wildlife conservation nonprofit organization dedicated to the protection of threatened and endangered species and the habitats they depend on for survival. After experiencing the environmental devastation of the Fukushima nuclear crisis, Wendy decided to switch careers to pursue her passion for environmental protection and contribute to the fight against climate change and biodiversity loss. Fun fact, Wild Tomorrow also celebrated their 10-year anniversary recently. Congratulations, Wendy. This evening, joining Wendy, we have three other alumni from the MS in Sustainability Management program who are also working in the nonprofit sector. We have Esther Pang joining us in person. She is the executive director of Future Incubator. We also have Annie Huang joining us virtually. She is Asia Pacific Regional Organizer at the Climate Reality Project. And lastly, Megha Mehdiratta, Senior Innovation Associate at the New York Climate Exchange. Please join me in welcoming our panelists tonight.
Hi, everyone in the room and virtual. Really delighted to moderate this final but last but not least workshop on sustainability career paths in nonprofit and advocacy. I think this is such a meaningful and important topic and something I think SUMA students don't often think necessarily about careers in the nonprofit sector, which I think is a shame because I can tell you as someone who I worked on Wall Street for 10 years, I did a complete 180 and changed careers, using the SUMA program to, then become the founder of a wildlife conservation nonprofit called Wild Tomorrow. And I can say that working in the nonprofit sector is deeply meaningful. And I get to meet the most amazing people who are all purpose-driven and mission-driven, which is just not to say that people on Wall Street aren't amazing, but I really get to meet the most kind, caring, passionate people who work in the nonprofit sector. So I highly recommend it. Give a little bit of a push for the sector. Tonight, our panelists, myself and the panelists, will share our journeys, our kind of the twists and turns in our careers that led us to nonprofit roles, and the challenges we've faced, the fulfillment they've felt in these careers, and of course, the classes that they took and how they leveraged the SUMA program to get these jobs and be successful in these careers. So I'm really excited to welcome our amazing panelists tonight, and let's hear from them about what they're doing and who they're working for and kind of the values that drive their work at their NGOs. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce our panelists. I'll have them introduce themselves, actually. So starting with Esther, who's here, and then we'll go to the cloud, the virtual panelists. But Esther, firstly, what year did you graduate? And then what's your current role and the values that drive you and the work of your nonprofit?
Thank you so much, Wendy. So I graduated in 2018. I'm currently the executive director at a nonprofit incubator called Future Incubator. The values that drive me is authenticity and also the desire to really make a sustainable and long-lasting impact in the world. So that's where I can start, and I can get into it more later.
Great. And next, in our virtual room, how about Annie?
Hi, everyone. I'm Annie. I graduated last year at this time. and I currently work at the Climate Reality Project. I feel like what drives me or the values that drive me are honesty and probably a lot of community building and trust.
Awesome. And what's your title at the Climate Reality Project?
I'm the Asia Pacific Regional Organizer.
Amazing. We're going to get into what exactly everybody does at their NGOs, but next we have Megha.
Hi everyone, my name is Megha. I graduated from the SUMA program in December of 2022 and I walked in May 2023, something like that. I'm currently a senior innovation associate at the New York Climate Exchange, and I believe we'll get into the details of that later, but it's a new nonprofit that's based in New York City. And the values that sort of drive me and my work today are similar to Annie. It's definitely truth, the truth to kind of do work that I'm passionate about, and then also equity. I come from India, an emerging market, and I've seen a lot of disparity in the way that different economics work out for people in different income brackets and different regions in India. And I strive for equity in both urban as well as rural areas. So I'll share more about the work that I do at the New York Climate Exchange, but that's also a pillar and a huge value for the organization that I'm at right now.
Thanks, Megha. For me as well, I'll just add my values, or really what's driving me is the desire to create impact. And I think that you really have that opportunity in NGO. You can really work directly in a really tangible way with communities and other organizations and partners to create impact. So I'm really driven by the desire to like fight back against extinction and help save wildlife. So next, I'd love to hear from we all would love to hear from our panelists more about their actual roles at the NGO and the kind of work that you're working on. So while tomorrow I'm the co-founder and it's really managing an organization. So the work I do is kind of a little bit of everything, managing a team, building an organization, finance, administration, fundraising, event management, donor relations, community building. There's so much that goes into storytelling. There's so much that goes into nonprofit management, which is why it's an exciting field, because there's pretty much everything within it and some specific things as well that are specific to nonprofits. But okay, so Esther, if you could tell us more about your role, because you're an executive director, so you're running an organization, and what are you doing exactly?
Yes, echo everything that you just said. So my background, similar to you, I also spent 10 years at Wall Street. But when I first went to finance, I kind of knew that I wanted to do something related to social impact. So either trying to align myself with CSR, corporate social responsibility, or doing a lot of volunteer work with the banks. I also focus on roles that gave me transferable skill set, like project management, how to manage a budget, how to do reporting, how to do a presentation. So all that stuff I'm doing day to day. And I remember one of my mentors in finance told me that, like, to move up in finance, you can do either manage people really well, or you can be a specialist, but it's really hard to be like a generalist. And I'm like, oh, I like to do everything. So the role I am right now changes day to day, which is really fun for me. So I love it. And yeah.
But what exactly does the Future Incubator do? What do you incubate?
Oh, I'm not a good ED because I did not talk about the tech lines. So what we do is we turn youth-led initiatives from bold ideas into lasting impact. The service that we offer is actually called fiscal sponsorship, and I'm not sure if people are familiar with it, but a fiscal sponsor builds up the operations for say payroll, finance system, accounts payable, all that fun stuff on behalf of projects. So the majority of our projects are youth-led initiatives. We actually have a couple of projects with the leads that are based in Colombia. I was trying to meet up with them, but I was running late, so did not get a chance to connect with them. But we have a portfolio of projects that range from climate justice to civic engagement. And we recently took on a couple of projects in the mental health space. So it's been really fun. And we know that it's really hard to start a nonprofit. So being a fiscal sponsor lower that barrier of entry for our projects that just want to focus on doing the work while we are the operational partner.
It's amazing. So if anyone out there is thinking about starting a nonprofit, you could potentially talk to Esther about helping incubate, because it is a lot of work to even found a nonprofit and do all the compliance and administration. So you kind of go under the umbrella of the fiscal sponsor, which is very valuable. And next, Annie, we'd love to hear from you about your role at the Climate Reality Project. And I'm also dying to know if you met Al Gore.
I did get to meet Al Gore this year in June, which was really cool. So for those who don't know, Climate Reality Project was founded by former Vice President Al Gore. And my role at the Climate Reality Project is mostly related to our international branches. We have 11, and I specifically work with our 4 branches in the Asia Pacific. So that includes Australia, Japan, Indonesia, and the Philippines. And I would say that my role specifically is more like a program manager. So I support all of our branches' programming. I review all of their annual strategies, and then also do support some of their grants as well. And I knew that I really wanted to work internationally, so that is kind of how I ended up at Climate Reality Project, which has been really cool. And I do get to travel quite a bit for my work.
That's awesome. Do you get to travel internationally for your work?
Yes, I was in Kenya earlier this year.
Personally, I think that's very exciting. I'm going to say that on behalf of everybody. I think that having a role where you can travel to amazing places, including internationally, would be, exciting and rewarding. So that's very cool. Next, Megha, do you want to talk about your relatively new role at a very new organization?
Yeah.
And by the way, her office is Governor's Island. Yeah.
It's super cool. Yep. So I can share a bit more about the New York Climate Exchange. We're a new nonprofit. We came around about 3 to 4 years ago from a bid from the city of New York to build a center of excellence. So we're essentially founded by a coalition of partners led by Stony Brook University, as well as 11 other academic partners, including NYU, Duke, Georgia Tech, and a few others, as well as corporate partners like BCG, Moody's, as well as about 30 plus community organizations in New York City. So the goal is to eventually build a campus on Governor's Island, which is where we're headquartered. And in the meantime, in the time that it takes to build the campus, we're imagining about a few more years. So have the campus up and running by 2029. We hope to deliver impactful programming that could be across education, research, other convenings, and technology. So I'm a senior innovation associate, and I have 2 big projects that I work under. One is climate tech. So I'm helping to essentially build climate tech programming. We've started off by building a fellowship, a climate tech fellowship, to help innovators and entrepreneurs coming out of early stage research in universities and help them commercialize their technology. And I spend a lot of my time to actually, work with these entrepreneurs, work with these existing accelerators in New York City, as well as the research universities, and find ways to establish more of a, I'd say, convening role. The second part of my work is more recent at the exchange itself, but we are supporting with data preservation efforts as federal data is at risk. We're in the process of essentially transferring data, saving data, preserving it, and also trying to make it more accessible. And we're doing that with support from some of the philanthropic organizations that we work with. So it's kind of like a dual role, and similar to Annie, it's kind of like a program management role. So day-to-day work kind of revolves around multiple things. One is like strategy, which is super high level. So you're like, developing concept notes, you're like developing financials to see if the program can be up and running. the next stage of it would be like some of the grant writing work and like actually trying to see how fundable these projects are. But I also sit and like develop the implementation. So, finding the right people for fellows to work with, finding the right mentors, and like actually going on ground, hosting events. So it's kind of like across the spectrum, but it essentially allows for us to build from start. And in some ways, it feels like a startup because this nonprofit is also very new, just about 3 to 4 years old. And we're a team of about 25, so we're building as we go along. And yeah, it's been super exciting.
I'm just going to say 25. That's a lot of new jobs in New York City for sustainability and climate. That's pretty awesome. And I know Megha was super busy during Climate Week. How many events did your organization host?
35 events across New York. We hit just the 2 boroughs, but we had impact across all 5 because we had community organizations in different boroughs, and different team members were working on those projects. I hosted 2. One was on data and one was on tech incubation, and they were across Governor's Island, but also in partnership with a lot of players out there in the ecosystem. So it was really an amazing way to see the potential that the New York Climate Exchange has of convening people. And our belief is that climate, as most of you also know, intersects across various industries and various fields and functions. So it was a really amazing place for us to see scientists working with entrepreneurs, or like, economists coming here as well, journalists coming here as well, talking about climate storytelling, nonprofits, other organizations. So it is a real exemplar of what the power of convening can hold at the New York Climate Exchange. And I think it was a huge success this year for us.
And I think it speaks to, I think, what I noted in my introduction, that one of the amazing benefits of working in a nonprofit is meeting amazing people doing amazing things. And I'm just thinking how many amazing people you must have met, Megha, in like 1 week with all of those events. But also, I'm sure they were the founders and like influential people within the climate space, climate justice, climate tech. So I feel like Megha is a good person to network with, just by the way, because she's very embedded in that ecosystem. So my next question, and I'm really curious about this because I know I personally I didn't wake up and think I want to work in the nonprofit sector. It kind of happened to me. It happened to me because, well, my now husband, we fell in love because we loved animals and we wanted to help wildlife, and saw a real need on the ground in Southern Africa where there was this need that wasn't being met. And I, never thought, oh gosh, let's start a nonprofit. Like, that's kind of a crazy thing to do. You might agree with me. But so it's not that it was a planned thought to have a career in nonprofit. I was a SUMA student. I started the program in 2015. Coming from finance, from Wall Street, capital markets, I thought I'll do sustainable finance, which also would be great. It drives a lot of impact. But suddenly I ended up being part of seeing this emergency and wanting to help, and seeing a way very clear how to help save habitat, get equipment to rangers, protect habitat, create corridors. So I feel really lucky to be in this space, but and in some sense kind of created my own job. So created an organization. But so I'd love to hear, that was my kind of journey unexpectedly into the nonprofit world. I knew nothing about it. And maybe there's a benefit to being naive and just trying, because I remember at the time thinking, what's the worst thing that could happen? We could fail, at least we tried. So I'm love to, and also, Wild Tomorrow is 10 years old, and we've raised a lot of money and created a lot of impact in wildlife conservation. I actually can hardly believe it. So, follow your dreams if you see that opening. But I would love to hear from our panelists, like how did you end up, you were also Wall Street, in nonprofit? I'll start with Esther.
Thank you. So when I was at Morgan Stanley, they were doing a lot of work related to sustainability and also pro bono volunteering. And I joined one of their programs where they would gather volunteers from across the firm and we will spend, I think, about 12 weeks with a nonprofit to advise them on their scalability, capacity building, all that fun stuff. I'm like, oh, this looks really fun. So I got selected for the program, and I just loved it so much that they actually asked me to join the board after. And I was like, what? Like, me? But I did. I gave it a chance, and then I ended up serving on the board for about 10 years. So I have that insight in terms of like nonprofit governance, what I really liked about it, and then what I didn't like about it. And when I graduated from the program, like my old boss at Morgan Stanley is like, do you want to come back? I was like, no. Even though I really needed a job. So I did a lot of soul searching on my end regarding what I actually wanted to build in my career, because part of the reason for going to the program was to actually do a career switch. And similar to Wendy, I thought I was going to go back to finance, but in the impact investing side. But I kept my options open, and one of the jobs that opened up, I still remember this, was, so I was doing like part-time here and there, but one of the jobs that I really liked that opened it up was a project management role to support the follow-up to the climate marches in 2019. And they needed an organizer to do project planning for them, to do a follow-up march in April 2020. So I got my job March of 2020, supposed to be working to plan this like national marches in multiple cities. And a week into that job, they said, I don't think there's going to be any marches. So I end up pivoting my role in that organization to just do like daily webinars because everyone was stuck at home. And then we end up doing a Earth Day Live that was like a 3-day live stream. And that was kind of like my pivot into the nonprofit space where opportunities kept opening up with this organization in director of operations role, and then eventually the executive director position kind of aligns with some of the organizational changes. So that's where I am, and it's been a very fun journey.
Love the twists and turns. So I would say be open to opportunity and change. Next, Megha, where are you? There you are. Because I'm gonna end with Annie because she's the most recent graduate. So that will be interesting to hear her search how you ended up. But first, Megha, how did you end up at Governor's Island?
Yeah, it is a twisting story, but maybe I can start at like go back to 2016, which is when I graduated from my undergrad. I completed my undergrad in California, and even though I'm born and raised in India, I kind of, had the opportunity to do my undergrad, moved back to India after completing that, and started my work at the Ministry of Commerce in India. So I was working at a public-private partnership, quasi non-profit structure. So started my career there, and it was really interesting because that organization in some ways is very similar to from an organization and structure point of view, the New York Climate Exchange, because it was kind of partially related to the government, but it wasn't government. It had like a unique position to actually work very closely with government and create that impact, but it had a startup feel to it. So I worked at this organization called Invest India, and the goal was to basically facilitate foreign direct investment into the country. So we would be going to different cities and states across India and trying to work out incentives for foreign investors coming in. We were essentially consultants for people who are trying to do business in India. And it gave an opportunity for me to touch upon policy, meet with, CEOs of big companies coming from the West into India and trying to set up businesses, and then also kind of go on ground and see the reality of what India looks like. So started my career there, and I think it was a really amazing opportunity for me to in that nonprofit structure get a chance to actually build my leadership skills, because so early on in my career, if I'd followed a traditional path, I'd probably have to make it past like at least 6 to 8 years to be able to be client facing. But here I was thrown into like big conversations with ministers of energy, ministers of technology, and CEOs. And, that's the advantage of a nonprofit. So I wanted to highlight that. But it gave me a really good kickstart to just having the exposure to building and networking, and also kind of understanding how partnerships work. I worked there for 3 years, and a big part of my project towards the end of my time there was in commercialization of technology. So I helped to commercialize technology out of institutes in India. And while I was there, I worked with the principal scientific advisor of India, like the lead scientist. And that was an insane experience because, he was basically working with like the space agency of the country, the agricultural agency of the country, and he kind of opened my doors to climate. That was kind of my foot into the door from into the climate field. And my first project was, related to waste management in India. I got very excited by the prospect of technology and tried to kind of start my own business for a bit. So ran that, and I also worked in a few climate startups in different roles, but essentially kind of like playing the role of an innovation manager or a program manager, or in some cases the CEO's office, so like a chief of staff. And found my way to SUMA in 2022. My focus when I joined was in climate finance. I was thinking, I've gotten this like policy experience, I've gotten this tech experience. I'd love to get some more like sustainable finance experience. So it's almost like the flip of a lot of people who go into finance. They get the finance experience and then venture out. I kind of like started the other way and focused a lot of my classes as well as experiences at SUMA in sustainable finance. So that was a lot of my coursework, but I also was, taking opportunity to work with other startups along the way. I found myself after graduating from SUMA at a sustainable finance advisory firm called Pollination, based in DC. And while I was there, I was working with nonprofits. I was working with climate funds with banks to help them on their transition plans. So it was really interesting for me because even though it was a corporate setup and I was, at that level of understanding what finance could mean, I was also working with organizations like World Wildlife Fund, Conservation International, that needed the expertise that we were bringing to help design climate finance strategies and impact frameworks. I worked there for about 2 years, and I came across this opportunity at the New York Climate Exchange. And what really drew me there was kind of the hybrid nature of like it being a nonprofit, but also being a startup. And the role that I was focused on was in climate tech and climate finance. And I think it was a really nice way for me to bring all of that together and also have a focus on, I think driving down on the first point that I was trying to bring as I gave my introduction, I was talking about how equity matters to me a lot. So I feel like New York Climate Exchange was able to really talk about high level, climate finance and climate data and climate tech concepts and like build that programming, but was also looking very deep into communities within New York City and trying to have that lens as they worked on their programming. And that really excited me. So found that to be an amazing opportunity. And, it being a nonprofit really has already driven my career path in the sense that I'm driving missions. I'm like working with NYSERDA, I'm working with ED, the New York Economic Development Corporation. So I feel like I'm in a very similar role as my career started, but completely different and super rewarding.
That's amazing and inspiring. Megha was in my first sustainability management class, and I'll say that she was the most dedicated student ever because it was just post-COVID, and I think it was issues with visas and coming over and travel. And she took like the first half of the semester like virtually from India, which is like 4 a.m. her time. So I feel like that dedication shines through from that first SUMA class through her career into now what she's doing. It's really amazing to see what she's done in her career so far. And then Annie, you're the most recent grad, so you've recently done the job searching and soul searching to end up at Climate Reality Project. Maybe you can talk about your path there.
Yeah, I guess I could start with while I was at SUMA. When I went into SUMA, I kind of had no idea what I wanted to do after. I was really interested in climate policy and climate education, and so I kind of dabbled in a little bit of everything. And then I was really lucky the summer semester of SUMA, I landed an internship at the UN, which was really focused on a lot of different climate policy work and working with a lot of different member states, which is what kind of drew me to wanting to work internationally. And then so I still didn't know that I wanted specifically to work in the nonprofit sector, but when I was job hunting, this opening at the Climate Reality Project came up, and it was kind of a perfect match between getting to work internationally with our different branches, getting to do a little bit of work on climate policy and climate education, which is how I ended up there. And it didn't seem like it matched my SUMA courses super well in the beginning, but because our branches do a lot of different work, so our Japan and Australia branches work with businesses, they do a lot of business-focused emissions reduction, and our Philippines branch does a lot of renewable energy development. So actually a lot of my SUMA classes became really helpful. But yeah, I think I have less of a winding journey, but that's how I ended up at Climate Reality.
I love that. And that's a great segue into the practical side of this panel, which is talking about the classes that were most useful in your current career, and why. So I'll start with Esther.
I love Claudia's class. I don't know if you guys have taken it. I love it so much that I audit it during summer times. That's my dedication to that class. I did my undergrad in communications. So I think there's probably a piece of me that still wanted to be a journalist. So my final project was about March for Science, the first one during Trump's first term. So I actually went down to DC. The weather was kind of like this, and I remember I'm like, I am a reporter. And I just went up to people and be like, hi, I'm a journalism student at Columbia. Kind of not exactly true, not at Pulitzer, but close enough. I'm taking a journalism class. And I just took all the skill set that she taught us in the class and was just really listening to the people that were there. It gave me confidence to just go up to random people and be like, why are you here? Like, what? Like, tell me your story. And 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 then I submitted my first draft, and the feedback was terrible. And there's a reason for that. Is because the feedback was you focus on people that were there. What about the people that weren't there? I was like, oh, I see. So it also forced me to really look at things from a different perspective. And I went down the rabbit hole of like look at news articles to see which scientist thought that science shouldn't be political, like which scientist was giving quotes about why people shouldn't be marching for science, and doing cold calling to reach out to them and really listened and heard their story. And I think that skill set really comes through in a lot of work that I do, particularly dealing with some of the because we work with so many projects, everyone has a different perspective. There's sometimes a tendency to say, oh, well, this is the way that needs to be done. It's like, okay, no, let me take a step back. And I want to hear your story. Let's collaborate on this. And I think that class really influenced me a lot in my thinking. And it gave me space to practice that. So I love that class.
I was going to say there's two classes that Claudia teaches. One is the writing about global science for international media, which was definitely one of my it's my personal favorite, and I found very useful, building confidence in writing, and the idea that I could get published was like revolutionary to me. And also the idea of having critical feedback from someone who was a New York Times journalist and written for some of the world's most important publications. She's interviewed the Dalai Lama, like all political leaders, rebels. She has an amazing amount of experience and knowledge to pass on. So she has that class, and also one that's specifically about writing op-eds, which is also super valuable for nonprofits to get your word out there, to advocate for your cause. One way is to get published as an op-ed, which for most people you wouldn't even know how to begin. So her both classes will teach you how to pitch editors and to meet editors and to kind of understand the process. So that's a really practical class for nonprofits. Who's next? Megha, what classes were most practical for you?
Yeah, I can speak a bit more to that. There's not one, and it took me a hard time to like narrow it down, so I might go on for a bit. But one of the most favorite classes for me was Impact Finance with Bhakti Mirchandani. It was one of the more rigorous courses that I took, and I think a reason why I really enjoyed it is that it broadened my understanding about finance in general and how it can be used as a tool for impact and how it can be used as a tool for good. And that could mean anything from, blended finance instruments to catalytic capital involving philanthropy, but also like working with nonprofits. And I think like shifted my perspective on the importance of finance in even a nonprofit. For some reason, I think a lot of people, including myself, prior to taking some of these courses, always assume that nonprofits are not profitable. But I think like finance is as important of an element in those type of organizations as well. So I think it really helped me to understand that. And beyond that, it was really cool to have Bhakti teach, because she's an MD at Trinity Church, Wall Street, and leads their impact division. She brought in a lot of her colleagues and peers across this field, and they kind of like really touched upon different frameworks. And it was really cool to see like the breadth and depth that they would go into from both like a local point of view, but also an international point of view. And that really excited me, because coming from India and seeing like the developing world or the emerging world need a lot of sorry, I got a bit distracted, but need a lot of capital coming in. It was exciting for me to see that the possibilities were there, and it is possible to de-risk a lot of climate solutions for the global south. So that was one of my most like impactful courses in terms of both like leveling up my skill, but also like understanding the ecosystem and kind of helping drive my journey forward. Two other courses that in some ways were very impactful. One I have to highlight here is the capstone that I did. I was the project manager for it, and my client was Wendy. It was Wild Tomorrow, and we basically worked on a financial projection for their capital project. And they were in the process of kind of building a donor house in their conservation land in South Africa, and we were kind of like working on the financials for it. And again, it was just a very interesting perspective for me to understand how important it was to build something like that, which is a capital project, to serve conservation, and like how that finance even drives through. And from a personal skill set point of view, it was really exciting for me, because I was kind of managing a team of 10 and kind of handling client relations, and that also led to continuous conversation with Wendy. I'm now on the junior board of Wild Tomorrow, and I really get to engage with a lot of people who are so inspiring and also care a lot about conservation. So that's another course that kind of became a very important part of my life and my professional life. So excited about that. And the last course is the innovative practicum, which is very different, and it's usually unexpected to hear someone talk about that. But I like to highlight that because, as Wendy alluded to earlier, I love networking, and that course is basically like guest speakers coming in every class every week. And I became very close to like 3 people out of 8 lectures that we had, and I continued that connect, and they really helped me shape my advice, and they're key mentors in my life today. So different reasons why I have favorite classes, and sorry I rambled on a bit, but I had to share the stories.
I love that, and I'm honored. But also, I would say the practicum in sustainable leadership, those classes I think are kind of underrated. And I mean, I'm biased because I teach the practicum in the spring, so sign up, guys. But like bringing leaders in the field who are doing this and living it and working it every day. And I teach with Sophia, and we love to bring NGOs and public sector leaders because I think you get a lot of exposure to more corporate sustainability. So we try to mix it up a bit with more NGO founders and leaders. And we've had diplomats come and talk so passionately about their small island nation facing this existential crisis of climate change. So, and the class tends to be smaller. So like Megha said, you can, and the speakers are so nice. They'll be like, yes, share my email with everyone. And yes, we have internships. And it's a really great opportunity to meet like leaders of organizations in a more intimate setting, and they're dedicating their time. They give a whole hour talk about sometimes they talk for like 2 hours about their work. So they're really committed to kind of paying it forward and wanting to help students. So you can take it for 1 credit or 3, but or even drop in on a class if it's a speaker that you're particularly interested in. So I think it's a great pathway thinking about careers and potentially landing an internship as well. So, and Annie, you just graduated, so this is all top of mind to you. Like you mentioned a little bit earlier about some of the practical classes, or what for you what classes do you kind of recommend that helped you the most or are helping you the most now?
I think I have 2, and the first one, unfortunately, I didn't get to take Claudia's classes. I really would have liked to, but I managed to cross-register into the climate schools class, climate communications, and I really loved it. It was super interesting. I think besides the fact that we got to try and write for a lot of different audiences and just learn how we can frame our narrative a little bit better, the most interesting part was that we learned how the climate change deniers or non-believers think, and how we can try and reach them, or what kind of tactics they use to convince people of their perspective. So that part was really interesting. And I think working in an international organization, I come across it quite a lot. And so I think understanding how people on the scale of believing climate change versus non-believing, how they think differently is really helpful. And then my second class would probably be sustainable operations. I think especially in the nonprofit world and the advocacy world, I feel like there's a tendency to talk in really big picture, like top down, we need to achieve this by this year, or these countries need to work together. But I feel like the sustainable operations class really gave me good background insight into how the actual emissions reduction happens, and how different organizations kind of have to work towards this goal, and how they do that along their supply chain, so that when I'm listening to these conversations about COP and negotiations and like the Paris Agreement, it doesn't fly over my head. Like I can kind of visualize and understand the work that needs to happen in order for us to reach the goals that we set out. So I think those would be my top 2 classes that I took while I was at Columbia.
Great, thanks, Annie. And I would add for me, I came from finance, so I tried to choose classes that weren't finance. And I remember taking Earth Climate Systems by Dr. Ben Cook and being like, wow, I get to learn about the climate system from a NASA scientist. So I felt it gave me the confidence to know that I know a little bit about climate science. Like I felt that I could have that credibility. And but the next question for our panelists is looking at, because I know from me that the list and the breadth of courses you can take now has proliferated. Like for me in the last 10 years, I started the program 2015, and it's so amazing and exciting to see the new classes, and maybe a little, I can't imagine trying to choose actually what to take because there's so many amazing options. And so the question for everyone is like, if you're in the program now and there's a new class, what would you take and why? For me, I'm really excited to see biodiversity classes because when I did the course, there wasn't really any classes that focused on biodiversity or ecology. There was Ralph Schmidt's class in forest management, which I did. It was the first semester and I loved it. So I would say there's Reversing the Biodiversity Crisis and also the new one, Biodiversity and Climate Science with Professor Ralph Schmidt, which is so much the science and the ecology. So I definitely recommend those if you're specifically wanting to be in kind of the biodiversity NGO space. What about you, Esther?
So prior to coming to SUMA, I actually took some classes at FIT in their sustainable fashion program. But it was really geared towards people that were already working in fashion. They did a lot of case studies. And when I was here, there was nothing about sustainable fashion. So I was very excited to see that on the agenda, the curriculum. I probably would have taken those classes. And the other one would have been art and climate change. I love that. That's a passion project that I'm doing on the side. And I wish there was a class for that when I was here. I think maybe my journey would be a little different.
And Esther and I were talking about that a little bit earlier. And I think when we're talking about solving climate crisis, biodiversity crisis, so much of it is about moving people to care, moving people to act, which is a lot of what nonprofits do. And there's something to be said for the power of art. And that it's hearts and minds that will change the world, not we've seen it. Facts don't move people to act. But art and film and storytelling and writing can really move, not academic journals. Like you need to get this stuff out into the popular mind and to move people's hearts. So I very much agree. I would love to do the art class. Yes, but what about you, Megha? Because you also graduated quite a few years ago. So there's a lot of classes for you too.
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing a lot of new courses in sustainable finance as well as there's a climate tech and innovation course, which I found interesting. But specifically, if like I had to go back and I knew I wanted to work at the New York Climate Exchange, I found a lot of courses from the list that, would allow me to actually use that experience and knowledge and be able to create that impact. And those would include equity and energy and the built environment, urban form, ecological design and redevelopment, and then environmental justice and geography. And these are all at the intersection of, communities living in urban settings and having to work with adaptation and resilience in climate change. And I think that would have been really exciting for me if I knew I was going to work at the New York Climate Exchange.
Amazing. And Annie, you just graduated, but were there classes you couldn't take that you wish you could have taken?
I'm not sure if there are any that are completely new since I graduated, but I think I would have loved to take a class on sustainability and urban form and ecological design. Similar to Megha, I feel like, especially working with a lot of the global south, there's a lot of work that needs to be done for adaptation and resilience. And so it would have been cool to have like a general understanding of best practices or innovations. Yeah, I think I would have taken that if I had the time.
Great. And we are closing in on, I've got like 2 questions I really need to ask you guys. So, but first, and this is where there's slide, I wanted to ask each of you, because, NGO work, nonprofit work is very much mission driven. What has been your most fulfilling moment in your nonprofit work so far and why? I'm going to start with, Annie, you haven't had a lot of chance to really get there, but what so far has been the most fulfilling or moving part of your work so far?
I would say probably when I was in Kenya earlier this year, not just because I got to go to Kenya, but we got to meet our Africa branch, and a lot of our other branch staff from all over the world come together and talk about all of these programs that we've been supporting them on. And we also got to meet a lot of our volunteers who were so excited and passionate about climate change and wanting to do something in their local communities. And I feel like that was a moment where I really could see the impact of my work and the people that we were bringing together. So I think that would probably be the most fulfilling or impactful moment so far.
I love that. And Megha, I think we have some photos from you. What was?
Yeah, I think the photo captures it really well. But within this year, from start to finish, built this tech fellowship for innovators from, the research universities that we work with. And the goal of this program that I launched in September was that each of these fellows runs through a 6-month commercialization program. They get one-on-one time with mentors, and they get exposure to a lot of funders, prospective funders, grantees, non-dilutive funding experts, and they got to present each of their innovations on Governor's Island. So this photo is from that week that each one of them flew in from different partner universities to New York for Climate Week, and we had a bunch of events for them. And as you can see, we're all kind of in our shebang here. So it was really awesome to get to know each one of them and to see the fruition of the Climate Tech Fellowship. And just this Friday, they're going to be having their last module, after which they'll be doing another virtual presentation of their work in January or February. So it's been really exciting and rewarding to see each of these founders grow and pivot and make changes. And, these are people who are, even before being an entrepreneur, like they have 8 years of tech from their PhD that they've done on like a specific material or a specific type of energy solution. And they don't know how to commercialize it. They don't know how to take it forward. So it's been so inspiring to see how they've been on their journeys to actually like understand how to fuel in that entrepreneurship spirit. And this is a photo from Governor's Island during Climate Week. The other photo there is basically a digital rendering of what the campus on Governor's Island will look like. So it's that building that looks like a U up front on Governor's Island, and there'll be like a ferry station or a ferry station right there. And as you can see, it's like a solar powered building. They're making it with all sustainable materials, and they're hoping that it becomes a hub for such programs like the fellowship.
Awesome. It looks very inspiring. And next we have Esther, your most memorable, fulfilling moments.
So I'm going to cheat a little bit. There's two. There's a professional aspect, and then there's a personal one. So professionally speaking, our organization previously was a program under a larger organization that decided to sunset this year. So we pitched to them to say, if you're sunsetting, then potentially might be asset that you need to liquidate. Is it possible to kind of give us seed money to stand up our program into a new entity? So this was at the Marketplace of the Future in DC. Joined the first DC Climate Week earlier this year, and we did a soft launch for our organizations, and we had a canvas that just asked people like, what's your superpower? So that's me and my compliance director. So yeah, because you need that in nonprofit. So and then the other piece I think I included, I really enjoy coaching and mentoring people. And I don't know if you can see, but in the first row, that's like my team back in 2023. And we were just attending this conference called National Network of Fiscal Sponsor. It's a national conference. It's the first time that most of the team was there. And at the end of the conference, they did a Q&A for feedback, right? And then one of my team members stood up and she's like, this is great, but I think you're missing some youth voices. And I don't know if y'all have done any lesson learned in a corporate space. There's a lot of like lip service, right? It's like, oh, I think you can do this. I think you can do that. It's like, right. Let's write this down. So the next picture is in 2025, this year, because since then, we got in touch with the conference. My Emma, who's my People's Ops Manager, is now part of the planning committee. We've been planning with this conference for the last 2 years, and she has been the MC for the conference. So it just kind of went from a feedback, and I think in the nonprofit space, there's a lot of kind of bandwidth for making ideas happen. And now we're part of this national conference. And it's been great to see her journey. And so my personal piece that I will share is I was lucky enough to go to COP28 in Dubai. And I think I was there for the second week, the day one of the second week. And I took a picture. No, I asked someone to take a picture for me, and I took a picture for him. I think based on his badge, it looks like he was a negotiator. And after I took the picture, he just said, he raised his fist. He's like, and now to save the world. So that is precious memory for me to, being a student, reading about COP and being there, and then actually meeting someone and being in this space for people that, for the most part, means well. So yeah.
I'm the last one. This is too long of a story to tell, but it was because of Claudia's class, one of my most, I don't know, amazing moments in the NGO space. While tomorrow was like a year old, not even, and I did Claudia's class. You have to do a story. I wrote about ivory, the illegal ivory market in New York City. It ended up, it is a much longer story, but being a part of the biggest ivory bust in New York state history. And this picture is where we went and kind of did a little photo shoot with the person in purple on that side. That's Detective Jesse Pollack. He's like the captain of the New York State Environmental Crime Bureau. Anyway, but what was so amazing about this moment was that what happened was a big bust, huge bust. They make the store pay kind of a fine. It's not officially a fine, but to pay back some of the damage that they've done to elephants. It was illegal ivory. And so they were, rather than go to jail, they pled out and gave $300,000 to charities, and they divided it up between three. And because I'd been a part of this kind of unintentionally a part of this undercover investigation, he recommended Wild Tomorrow as one of the charities that would get funding. So thanks in a winding way to Claudia's class and the project that I did, Wild Tomorrow was awarded $100,000 for to help fight wildlife crime, which we were a very small charity at the time. It was definitely the biggest donation we'd ever had. And so that photo was when we kind of like met with them and did a photo shoot to write about it. And I love that the investigators' faces are blurred out because they're like wildlife crime professionals. They do undercover busts, okay? So anyway, it's a long story. You can ask me about it, but that was a really proud moment in the history of Wild Tomorrow. And I couldn't choose because there's been 10 years and so many. I think the other one, this was like 2019. We save habitat, restore habitat. We reintroduced giraffe. And this is the very first baby giraffe born on our reserve. It's a baby portrait. Her name is Victoria. I just love the photo. And, to get that photo, reaching out to photographers and being like, we really, really want to get a photo of this momentous moment for Wild Tomorrow. So it's really beautiful. And then this was also for me, this was last year, the very first time having local kids come on the reserve. They're so excited because even though they live just down the road, it was the first time they'd seen giraffe and zebra and been able to actually see kind of their own wildlife, their country's own wildlife. So that was a proud moment. And I'm sorry, too many. Just the idea that we've built a team. This is the team. We have New York operations are smaller. We have 4 full-time people. South Africa is like 43 and growing. So, I like to think we have created as well tomorrow so many careers in conservation, which are hard to come by, and proudly majority Zulu and majority female organization. So that's my proud moments. And I think just to say, like, and advocate for the nonprofit sector, it is truly a sector, like a career path where you can make a big impact and work with, like I said, amazing people, passionate people. So I hope that you leave this conversation inspired and informed and maybe imagining your dream job at an NGO. I don't know if we have time to ask the panelists one last thing because I want to leave time for Q&A, but I was going to say, if you weren't working at your organization, what would be your dream NGO to work for?
I will create a curated climate art space, which I know Climate Museum exists, but like I want to do international pop-ups. Like that's what I would do. No, that's what I am gonna do in the future. A new NGO or fiscal project, because that's easier to stand up.
Annie, what would be your dream NGO? Well, you already had a pretty good one, but
I think I would love to work for B Lab, the B Corp certification nonprofit. It'd be really cool to work with lots of different organizations and kind of help them achieve like that standard of environmental and social governance standards.
great. And Megha.
Yeah, I think Elemental Impact is one that I've always looked up to a lot. It's a nonprofit, and they basically, are a climate tech incubator and accelerator, but they're nonprofit, and they get a lot of their funding from grants, but also have a very strong revenue model that they've developed. So that really excites me, and they have headquarters in Hawaii, which is where I'm going to be in a week, and I'm really excited about that. But they also have remote jobs, around the US, and it's really exciting to see the type of work that they've been able to build in the last, I'd say, 5 years.
Awesome. Because I think if you imagine the dream organization, maybe you can find an internship there or reach out on LinkedIn and try to network with people and get your way in there. And I'll say for my organization, we've hired people who came to us and said, I really want to work for you. And we didn't even have a role. So they started as an intern. And then, you get to experience who they are and their work after 3 months. And then it's like, I can't let this person go. So we've had that happen for 2 of like 4 or 5 interns where it ended up becoming a full-time job. So I just saying that it is a really great strategy. If you find an organization you really want to work for and try to get an internship, if they love you a lot, which, if you really impress them, maybe it will turn into, it's a great way to, and also hear about jobs there, because so often jobs aren't necessarily even advertised. So you will hear about it from them, or they might make one for you. That's something I think is helpful. But anyway, Q&A.
Thank you as well of you for sharing your stories, and it's really inspiring, and I'm fairly thankful for all the work that you guys are doing, whether it's within the community here in New York City and or abroad. I also come from a country within the global south, so I'm very drawn to sustainability as an issue that is within my community and can be solved from anywhere. So thank you for the work that you do and for sharing your stories. But I would also like to hear, because I'm also interested in non-for-profit work, what is some of the kind of the negatives, or what a moment within your career where you maybe thought like, maybe I should pivot towards back to where I was and or somewhere new that is not the non-for-profit?
Do you want me? I can start. I can say, especially as a founder, getting funding and just the eternal struggle to raise funds, and especially at the beginning, you're a startup. And, my partner and I didn't pay ourselves for 3 years, which I don't recommend. It's not sustainable, like financially sustainable, but it was because we were so passionate about the cause. And it took time to grow to a place where we felt a little more confident. So I would say, but with nonprofit, there's always the demand or that sitting over you to raise funding. But you build a board, you build a team, you build a community, and it starts to get easier. And it's also really, working in nonprofit, you meet the most generous people who want to help your cause. So it's a challenge, and it's also tough. What about you, Esther?
Sure. I think about this all the time. Also, as a founder, I think in addition to the funding piece, because it is a changing funding landscape, I know when I first moved into the nonprofit, coming from a corporate background, I'm very used to structure. I like structure. I like to be able to go to a Google Drive and find what I need to find. And I find that in that startup space, if you don't have it, it is a little chaotic. But I've been lucky enough in a founder position where I'm like, we're going to prioritize building out our operations. We're going to start talking about risk management plan. And people were like, what? And so I think it really depends on what you bring. And I found that in the nonprofit space, it's more receptive than, say, me working in finance and say, hey, I don't really like this report. Can we talk about this? They're like, yeah, we can talk about it, and nothing happens. So yeah.
Do any other, Megha or Annie, do you have reflections?
I think it's too early to say in some ways because I've only been at this organization for about a year. But at the same time, one thing that I've noticed as a difference from like a more uh, private setup is that in a nonprofit like the one that I'm at right now, because of like what's happening at the federal level and the federal headwinds, there's a lot more like tossing and turning just because of like the availability of funds. And I think nonprofits are impacted in a way that other organizations might not be. So there's some amount of certain uncertainty that comes across because of like socio-political issues. And I think, again, like we've all been talking about, like it takes some sort of like person who wants to work in that space and like, who can forget about all of these other things and just, work on their mission. And it's sometimes hard to do that just because what's happening at the federal level isn't easy right now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anusha, and I'm actually a prospective student for the Sustainability Management Program. It's my first time here at Columbia, so I'm super excited to be in the same space with like people in the academia who share the same purpose-driven passion as mine. Surprisingly, like many of you, I'm also studying finance and economics for my undergrad at the moment. But it had really always been like a dream of mine to have a career in nonprofit diplomacy and sort of work internationally with the mission to help already established organizations. But also I also had like a passion of starting my own NGO to help advocate for people who were victims of medical malpractice or people who had been diagnosed with like rare medical conditions because unfortunately, the resources for people in this situation is still very limited. And it's a passion. It's something that I hold close to my heart because I sort of want to advocate for people who were not only in need of support, but also empathy. And I learned so much from like everyone that shared, like especially both of you and the panel as well, because it's something that I really want to pursue. So I was wondering, like, for prospective students as me, how should I go about my application? And who are, like, I would love to also connect with people here, especially like talk with both of you at the same time. But kind of I'm still like not sure how I should like put out myself there to be in the same space as you, as all of you.
I'm sure, firstly, I'm sure your application, if you talk about all those hopes and dreams, will be fantastic. And I don't know if you guys, I know Steve Cohen reads all of them, but I think, but I know when I was starting my nonprofit, which was the year that I started as a SUMA student, I found it really, I wanted to meet people who'd started a nonprofit, and it actually was really hard. So I would say definitely you've got two here now, because I had a friend who worked in the nonprofit sector who really encouraged us and said, it's not that hard, because people told us, oh, the legal costs to start is like $10,000 just to start. And we're like, what? And then she was like, no, don't listen to them. We bought the book, like it wasn't really called like starting a nonprofit for dummies, but it was basically that. And we did it ourselves. We had someone review, but yeah, I think if you really want to start your own nonprofit, then definitely talk to people who've done it, and they'll be really supportive, and you can do it. And yeah, I think, and then I should mention within, the SUMA program is within the School of Professional Studies, and there's also the Masters in Nonprofit Management. So what you could do is definitely take SUMA, and then you could cross-register for some classes in the nonprofit management school as well. Like there's like fundraising and development, everything. So you could take 1 or 2 classes from them, which would be a great way to build your skills in nonprofit management too. Yeah, and it's a great community of like-minded people who will also support you.
I might use this as an opportunity to also answer one of the questions that I know you had regarding like strategizing your course in the program. I know that for me, to contractualize it, I was actually working full-time when I started the program. So I already had like limited classes I can take. And also because I just wanted to like learn everything, I did not have a strategy. And in hindsight, I think I would have picked something that, like, maybe obviously take all your required classes, but focus on a topic and like really do a deep dive on that, so that by the time you graduate, it's like, oh, I have all these options, but also I need more subject matter expert in that thing. So that would be my reflection.
I'm just going to add to that, because what you can do with some of the classes that you take is, and what I did as well was like, I knew I was like African wildlife conservation, but none of the classes really spoke to that. But there are opportunities to mix it in. So for Claudia's class, I decided to write about ivory in New York City. And for, I took the forest class, and I read and researched about South Africa's forests. And I did a SEPA class on the economics of poverty and the rhino horn poaching crisis, like where you could kind of incorporate your interests and dedicate your kind of class time and all that work and thought into something that will build towards what you want to do. So there's a way to work it in, even if there's not a class that's specific to your interest. You can kind of pursue it through or independent studies and like the research that you do and projects that you do within the courses. What about our virtual panel? Do you have any suggestions for? Yeah, was that I didn't see that, Megha. Was that a no? No, Annie?
I think you guys nailed it.
Awesome. What do we have time for? Another 2 more questions?
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. It was really inspiring for me to hear about your careers in sustainability. I'm still a sophomore at Columbia, and I'm studying chemical physics currently, but I actually really want to have a career in sustainability in the future. So yeah, thank you for everything you've shared so far. And my question is actually about the classes that you've mentioned. I was, listening to you talk about all these amazing classes, thinking I want to take these. And so I was wondering, are these classes also open to undergraduates?
I know mine is. I do sustainability management, but it's probably a better question for Maria.
If any of the other classes are appealing to you, then the best thing to do is contact the instructor and just talk through your interests, and they'll sort of evaluate whether the course is appropriate for you. But the 4000 series classes are designed for undergraduates as well to take.
Hello, thanks for sharing. I am a current student in the SUMA program. I was curious to know how your organizations are run, like from a management perspective, and if that's something you see as like a pro or a con in your work, coming from like a professional background where like organizational management is very critical to like either like work in finance or Wall Street or other things like that.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, as a founder and COO of an organization, it is all about so much about general management and building a team. And I would say especially for if you're a startup organization, starting up a nonprofit or something entrepreneurial, you have to kind of build your team because you can't be an expert in everything. So getting the right team together, I would say, and I teach the sustainability management course, the one that everybody has to take, okay? And we talk about management, and there's this point in the class where I'm like, okay, who knows what a budget is? And it always feels so weird because it feels so basic to be like, here's a budget, and it's like revenue and expenses, but it truly is fundamentally one of the most important skills for managing. I mean, maybe that's obvious, but for managing an organization is the financial management, the compliance, and HR. So I feel like I spend every week deep in budgets, if that's helpful. But so the general and the sustainability management class, and Steve Cohen's book has like all the basics of like kind of a quick review of management and organizational management and the importance of budget, the importance of a strategic plan. And it's actually really great reminders for me too, as a manager of an organization. I'm like, yes, we need to do our strategic plan. So I don't know if that's helpful, but I think Esther, because you are really into operational management, right, of an organization.
I am, but also because for our projects that join us, a lot of them is just like an idea, but they've gotten some traction. So one of the things that we do mandate trainings for our new fiscal project leads is that you need to do a finance management training. You need to know about like cash flow analysis, even just knowing how to read it. Like you don't need to put it together. You need to be able to talk about like legal and compliance. That's a really big one. And I would say one of the challenges being a funder though is that sometimes you're like, I need to do it all. Like I want to do everything. And like to Wendy's point, I think being a really good looking at that from the organizational level is really surrounding yourself with people that do know how to do the work so that you don't feel like you have to do everything yourself. And I think I've been really lucky with my team, and I'm sure you feel the same way with yours as well, right? Yeah.
When I started and we had 0 staff, my best friend was a friend who was an accountant and gave us free advice and did our 990, which is our annual filing for us. Like, so find your friends who, there's some people who love doing numbers, who love bookkeeping, who love that, and find those people because they can help you. Yeah, that's my tip. What about you guys up there on the big screen?
Yeah, at the New York Climate Exchange, where, as I mentioned, a team of 25, and out of that, 5 people work on, finance and administration, which includes HR, which includes accounts payable, which includes all of those kind of not technical, but like admin roles. Beyond that, we have a specific like advancement team, about like 3 or 4 people who just focus on fundraising. And then we have a team that looks at the capital project and works with architects and the construction folks. So it's kind of divided in those like maybe 4 categories, the fourth one being programs and development, which is where I fall into. And then we also, beyond that, have obviously a leadership team, and we have a board of about 15 to 18 members. And I think a lot of the larger decisions, especially because we're raising, our goal to fundraise is about $700 million. So the numbers are so large, we do need to report back to like the philanthropic, donors that have given us that catalytic capital to get this project up and running. So I think there's like an accountability from that point of view, but that also means a lot of reporting, a lot of like management skills needed to share the details for something like that. And then project management that goes across from like reports that go to donors, reports that go to the board, reports that go to the leadership, and then of course like finance and admin stuff as well. So I think those skills kind of at an organization that has 25 people, which I think is a medium-sized nonprofit or like maybe a small-sized nonprofit, depending on how you're looking at it. These roles become more and more determined and stricter in their day-to-day functions. I don't work on them in this particular role, but I know that the people who do are kind of experts in that.
I think that concludes our Q&A for tonight. So I want to thank our panelists again and Wendy for moderating. It is, again, really inspiring to see the work that you do. And it's sometimes challenging, like you said, with finding the funding and convincing people to join in on the cause. So I really am proud to see you all doing great work for the benefit of biodiversity, for the benefit of our planet, for the benefit of people. So thank you again. And I hope everyone enjoyed tonight's session. Get home safe and good luck with finals if you are a current student. So have a great night, everybody. And thank you again. Annie, Megha, thank you so much.
Thank you to our panelists.